Well, it's been over 5 years since I made that video about modern architecture. Has anything improved? Has it, fuck? The new neighbourhood. How quaint. How much for this slice of visual abortion? At the upper end, 20 million quid. This is, of course, Battersea, London, where they demolished the old neighbourhood.
You had friends, you had neighbours, you had your next door neighbours, you had your neighbours over the garden wall.
Razed all the nice little Victorian houses to the ground and kicked out all the natives.
You've got to conform, and really conform, or else you're out.
You can't stop modernity. Battersea Power Station, once an iconic symbol of London, now a hollowed out shopping mall. A church for the nowhere people living perched around it, where they can practice the only religion they know, avaricious consumerism. Its faded Art Deco grandeur, smothered and strangled by something out of Salvador Dali's worst nightmare. Then right on its doorstep you have Nine Elms, an ominous havoc of sunlight devouring terrible towers. Not so much homes as dismal storage facilities for habitation. This place is so vulgar even Donald Trump, not noted for his aesthetic sophistication, called it ugly. Look at it, a permanently unfinished vomit of carbuncle cack. The American embassy looking like a giant dystopian egg carton. Londoners blast eyesore towers next to Battersea Power Station, which ruin the view. That Gary building is terrible, looks like someone designed it in SketchUp and left half the faces reversed. I mean, whose idea was it to give the project to a dude whose own house looks like this? Yeah, you'd think after this, and this, someone would be like, hold up, this guy's not a real architect, he's taking the piss.
He said, I want to make a building that everybody in London is going to have to come look at.
Stop it, please, I beg you!
He made a sketch, and the whole body language of the building, of that shape and the way it pushed upward to the top.
Wow, what an awe-inspiring piece of embryonic inspiration. What did the architect responsible for ruining Battersea Power Station have to say about what he did? Frank Gehry hailed his monstrosity as, you guessed it, a powerful symbol of London's diversity. In England's capital city, wealthy foreigners living cheek by jowl with neighbours they'll never care about. Never even me. And in some cases, not even being able to speak the same language if they did me. Globo-homogenization, wherein diversity means the forced amalgamation of all cultures and the preservation of none. Any wonder it resembles the Tower of Babel. God disrupted the work by so confusing the language of the workers that they could no longer understand one another. The city was never completed and the people were dispersed over the face of the earth. Really makes you think, jolly old England ain't what it used to be. Lona Rose House, a building architect critic Rowan Moore said looked like its components had met on a blind date. Lewisham Gateway looks like 4 angry gang members about to knife you for daring to show your face in their end. I mean, how many glass and steel beehives can you pile on top of each other before people start to realise maybe humans aren't supposed to live like insects? Before we stop allowing these aesthetic terrorists to commit architectural jihad on our precious towns and cities. Speaking of the housing market, I want to show you an app that has become an incredible resource to keep me fully informed on issues like these and more. Today's video sponsor, Ground News. In a world where ad-driven algorithms and polarised outlets make it impossible to consult a single news outlet for the full picture, Ground News has become my go-to for breaking news, and that's why I'm excited to be working with them. The Ground News app and website compiles over 60,000 sources and articles in one place to show who owns the outlets, their factuality, and where on the political spectrum they fall. While I was doing the research for this video, I came across this story about the US housing market in Ground News. It says that according to economists, a housing recession has already arrived. Let's take a closer look at this article. We can see that there are 9 sources reporting on this story, with the majority centre or right-leaning on the political spectrum. Scrolling down, we can see all the articles reporting on this story. By swiping between headlines, we can see how powerful language is, where a word or detail can influence how a story is is portrayed by the media. Here we can see how the New York Post headlines the story as US housing market in a deep recession, while the Business Journal's headline is what economists are predicting for the housing market in 2023. I also find it really helpful how Ground News shows both the factuality and ownership of the sources covering the story. For this particular story, the majority of outlets are owned by media conglomerates, private equity or wealthy private owners, with 0% independently owned sources. Ground News also allows you to search and follow specific topics, locations and sources to see what's being covered on that keyword around the world, for example housing or real estate. Ground News is a non-partisan startup mainly funded by their subscribers. Join me on being fully informed on where our news is coming from. Go to ground.news/PJW to check it out for free or subscribe for unlimited access. Now back to the video. Londoners call for another lockdown on Oxford Street and Regent Street, rammed with shoppers in run-up to Christmas.
Bring on another lockdown. I know that sounds bad, guys, and forgive me for saying it, but that's how I feel.
I mean, what did you expect? The government just imported another 1 million people in the space of a single year. And while the housing market may about to experience a short-term crash, long-term prices just keep accelerating higher and higher, completely outstripping wage growth. Partly due to the sheer number of migrants, both rich and poor, flooding into the country. Young Brits dreaming one day of owning their own home, are living the nightmare right now of only being able to afford accommodation that's little better than a souped-up dog kennel. Housing is so expensive and London is so packed. Landlords are renting out grubby cupboards under the stairs for hundreds of pounds a month. Lovely. And if you're struggling with getting to sleep, maybe you can distract yourself by playing with the fuse box. Clapham bed under stairs advertised for £500 a month. Alex Lomax, 23, went to view the flat share in Clapham, southwest London, which was described as furnished in an online listing. Furnished. You'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Just be thankful that you can barely scrape enough money together to afford to rent a crawl space hovel. Compared to you, these boat migrants living in 4-star hotels at taxpayer expense are living like kings. As to the rest of the country, they're still erecting hideous brown blocks that literally start rotting after a few years. How much do you reckon for this soul-sucking new build in Nottingham? £500,000, £500,000 to own an overlooked soil pit. Bargain. Apparently the new trendy thing is to make your house look like some kind of bland corporate outpost. From this to this. This is so tasteless, the house itself looks physically distraught at what they've done to it. Corporate front door. Why would you want to feel you're starting your work day at Apple every time you come home? The 2022 Home Exterior Renovation Pack. You can't stop progress. Pave over the front garden, astroturf the back garden. There are so many new homes being built in the UK to try to keep up with the country's constantly ballooning population that cowboy builders have become notorious for, let's just say, cutting a few corners. Quality brickwork there, mate. Diagnosis of why this new house is suffering damp in the corner. New build roof didn't last too long. Help me. Windows. Who needs windows? Space is at such a premium that on new build estates, some houses have launched invasion campaigns. Grade 2 listed house, just build the new estate around it. And who gave planning permission for this outrage? Critics likened it to a red-faced child who just said something rude in a room full of adults. The situation is so dire, the government has now vowed to use everything in its power to stop ugly housing developments from being built in the first place. Yeah, a bit late for that. Still, at least we can look to the Americans for inspiration. Fully glazed mirrored office atop 13 stories of parking. Yeah, it's pretty hard to make a multi-story parking lot even uglier. But they managed it. Who needs a pleasant, walkable environment when you can have inhumane 6-lane freeways? America, not noted for being pedestrian friendly, but good God, what are they doing to the kids? New modernist church. Looks like a post-nuclear apocalypse bunker. And to compound the ugliness, there's this bizarre new obsession with erecting creepy figurines that look like they came straight from the set of Squid Game. Improve your city, remove public art. Writing a century ago, H.L. Mencken lambasted America's libido for the ugly. There exists, he wrote, a love of ugliness for its own sake, the lust to make the world intolerable. Its habitat is the United States. Trump passed an executive order in 2020 stating new US government buildings had to be beautiful, citing classical and traditional architecture as the preferred style. Then Biden immediately revoked it 69 days after it was signed. Globalist architecture exists everywhere, belongs nowhere. Synthetic, short-term, unsustainable. The city of tomorrow is just around the corner. And it's kinda like today, but even worse.